morning and welcome to Mental Health Mondays. My name is Jenna Kelland. I'm a holistic nutrition coach and mom of 3 kids with special needs. And as you know, every Monday we get together and talk about all the different things that contribute to and support good mental health and wellness. And usually all of that also supports our physical health and wellness. So we get a bonus there as well. And I've recently been doing interviews and bringing in some special guests to share their expertise because there are so many things that contribute to our mental health, and I find it helpful to really build that toolbox. There's lots of different resources and tools we can have, and we don't always know what they are. So I'm always excited to learn more things and to bring on these guests to share their expertise as well. So today our guest is Adele Anderson, and Adele is an NLP trainer. And so welcome, Adele.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jenna.
It's
Looking
great
forward
to have you here.
to it.
Yeah, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about your story and why you're interested in mental health and where it fits into your life and experiences.
Mhm. So I'm an NLP trainer, so that's neurolinguistics programming. We work with the mind. We understand how it works and that we're able to make it malleable. We can change the story. We can release emotional pain quite quickly in minutes and hours rather than in years. And it was really off my radar. But when I was 27, I survived a plane crash. So the small plane I was a passenger in crashed and flipped in water. It catapulted. And it flipped so fast that, my mind registered we were going under. I went to take a breath of air and my mouth filled with water. And then my life had changed. The sun had gone down. We had sort of wanted to do this little skip along the water as we headed back to the airport. Nobody seen us crash. It was like no 911 call. We were on our own. And it was dark, it was wet, it was confusing, gravity pulling us in weird directions. And I was trapped. I couldn't get the 3-point harness off it because it was an amphibious plane. I had a life jacket on and all those cables and straps would sort of twisted around each other. And I started getting the signs that I was losing oxygen fast. I didn't have much oxygen in my body. I'd, gone to take that breath of air. And my arms and legs started to tingle, like if you've ever experienced trying to swim underwater as far as you could go when you were a kid, you'd know that feeling, like let's get up and get some air. But that wasn't possible for me because I was trapped. And at that point, I had that flashing thought that, oh my gosh, maybe I'm going to die. And at that point, my life began to flash in front of my eyes. So it was almost forewarning of what was my future. Millions and millions of images. And then the images went beyond my death and gave me a preview of what could be my future if I was to stay under much longer. And that was a vision of local police officers going through my parents' front yard and going up their big steps and knocking on that old door. And my parents answered the door, and I couldn't hear the conversation, but I watched their facial expressions change. And it went from, curiosity or confusion to acknowledgement to understanding and then to horror. And my mom actually collapsed to the floor in this vision, and she covered her head with her hands and she screamed. And she screamed really loud inside my head. And it snapped me back into my reality of what was happening. I was trapped in a plane, upside down in water, and I was dying. And I needed to get out of the plane, and I needed to get out of it now. And by making that choice that this was not going to be my reality, my brain did amazing things. So all of those images that had flashed forward in time began to go in reverse, and it sourced the information I needed to escape a plane that had crashed and overturned in water. And that was a movie that I'd watched decades before, stored within my mind, in my memory. Didn't know the name of the movie, the actors, what the movie was about. But what I was witnessing in front of my mind's eye gave me all the information I needed to escape a plane that had crashed and overturned in water. And I actually followed the script of how to get to that 3-point harness, where it was located, how to get out, how to push to the bottom of the plane and out the windows. And I survived. I felt like an Olympian. I also wondered, like, if I could source that type of power within my mind when I was so close to dying, why didn't I have access to it every single day? There must be a secret to that. And I've been given an opportunity to do it again, to live life with a totally changed perception and awareness of the power within my mind. And it wasn't until I found neuroscience and NLP and how that works within our psyche that I really found the answers to my survival. And that's what I do for people now. And for myself, I use it every single day to, keep myself in my power and out of stress and to source the wisdom that we all have from every life experience that we've had, real or imagined.
All right. Well, that sounds like an amazing experience that kind of gave you your direction and allowed you to access that subconscious part of your brain and these experiences you had but clearly didn't remember consciously, this information. So, how can we use that? How can other people access what's in their subconscious? Or as you said, it's malleable. How can we change it or use it? It's like, how does that work?
Yeah, so there's really cool tools that we all have at our disposal. Knowing a little bit about your mind, the science of the mind, and how it works is very helpful. Obviously, the conscious brain, our greatest, latest, invention, if you want to call it, gives us a lot of power, but it keeps us in that brain that judges everything, that wants to analyze, rational, reasonable, all that kind of stuff. The subconscious brain, on the other hand, takes everything, real or imagined, as truth. And that includes what we believe. So that's the trick. And it's in time, meaning it doesn't really think about tomorrow or the next day. It's like, what's in my mind right now is my focus. And it's kind of like your best friend who always trusts you, who is your, cheerleader cheering you on. It does whatever you ask it to do. So to be aligned, I think that's number one thing to recognize. So for example, if I would have said I can't get out, my brain wouldn't have sourced the information that I needed. I know that now through science. For example, if we want to lose weight and yet we have a belief inside our mind that we're fat, well, our brain then creates the sabotage to support the belief that we are fat. So, how can we stop eating the Twinkie if we have that belief system? So, when we are moving towards our goals, we need alignment. Alignment in not just what we want, but what we believe is true and possible. So, that's one thing, not to doubt ourselves.
Mm.
Make sure that we're critically aligned with what we want to have happen. And it's like anything in your computer, right? You get a computer and maybe the programs aren't installed. So we can't really work in that. So we have to pre-install the programs in our brain as well. If we want to have a plan for our future, we have to think about it first. We have to have the vision. And more importantly, we have to have the feeling of what it would be like to actually be there now. So we need that in time, what I call in time, which means the present. So when we talk about staying present, that's where our subconscious brain lives, is in the now. It lives in sensory dialogue. So our brain understands the world through our senses, through what we see, smell, taste, hear, feel kinesthetically and emotionally. So we want to talk to our subconscious brain in that language. How do I see it? What does it feel like inside my body? What temperature is it? What do I hear when I see that vision? We want the try factor. Now, of course, there's more than five senses, but we really talk about those five. And the strongest three are auditory, kinesthetic, and visual. So if we can get that try factor alive inside our mind, or we create the ability for our mind to see something, to hear something, and then to provoke an emotion within our body. That is the essence of, if you want to call it manifestation. But creating something that we're moving towards and desire, those three things are intricate. What often stops us from achieving that is fear. So if we think of our brain having, there's no gray matter in, as in wishy-washy in our brain. It's either in the side of positivity or in the side of negativity. So fear is on that negative side, which really shuts down. It's like turning the light off in the room of sourcing information from the brain. Whenever we're in fear, that's that real primal part of our psychology that says, don't leave the cave. That is anything unknown. So, how we help our brain become comfortable with trying something new or exploring a new desire that we have is we begin to, it's like going shopping for a new pair of shoes. We go out and we start looking at shoes. We see a new pair of shoes, we try them on, see how they feel, walk around in the store. We give our brain comfort that this new thing that we're trying is not so new at all. So, as we make the brain comfortable with something new that we want to try, we're building that vision inside our brain by simply imagining it, imagining what it would feel like, what it would look like, what's happening around us, what would we hear, who's around us, what are they saying. Picture all of that in full detail, and it begins to give the mind this preloaded information that it's okay to go there. It's not as scary as what we thought. And once the brain is more comfortable, then we can access this amazing wisdom, this preloaded wisdom of all of our life experience that we've had. And it's like watching TV. Like I sourced a movie that I'd watched. Like it was an amazing insight into the capacity of our brain to connect. And I know my situation now was a perfect storm. I mean, drowning in a plane, I'm a great movie watcher. My husband says, I scream. So if you can imagine watching a movie of somebody actually drowning inside a plane, you get this feeling inside your body. And probably when I was upside down in that plane, I was really mirroring that experience again. So you can see it match. And so at 140,000 miles an hour, those brain waves connect to that previous emotion that I felt when I watched that movie. And it was a sensory movie. It had a picture, it had auditory, and it had a feeling. So those three connections really lined up with my experience. And so the brain accessed it. If I had read a book about it, if I read a book about this movie, then I would have had to create that within my mind to get that really strong, pure connection to it. I think that's key. But what I want to show is I have two balls that are different sizes, one little ball like a golf ball, and then one like a little kid's bouncy ball. So they're different sizes. And the smaller one would be what maybe we could access if we're in fear. And it could access it also at a younger age when we had less life experiences, less capacity because we had learned, we're just younger. It's not like we're less intelligent. We just have less life experience. Mm-hmm. We take more risks. We have less strategies because we just haven't had life experience. But when we're wise, like we are now, we have so much more capacity, so much more life experience, rational, reasonable. We've had the consequences show up. We know what's a good decision, what's a bad decision. So think of that as where we want to spend more time. But when we're in fear, we often go back to these younger ages when we were wounded, when those pain points entered our body. And we think of pain as a sticky neural peptide. Think of it as a magnet that's stuck to that event in our life. And when that magnet is stuck, it almost is like it's blocked the resources, all of the cool stuff that we learned during that difficult point in our life is stuck with this magnet. And until we release the magnet, which represents our emotional pain, those amazing skills, um, life skills, creativity, strategies that we learn during that event, almost like they're unusable. It's like we don't have the awareness to them. So there's a few ways for us to release that magnet, which I would love to share. If that's
For sure, that sounds great. Yes, because I think we get into fear whether it's a new situation or a situation that we've previously felt hasn't gone well, or as you said, our brain creates these images and videos or um, visualizations of what could go wrong. If anyone who has anxiety and worry and such, I don't know, I spend a lot of time imagining things that can go wrong, which is not, I know, which is not what you should do, because then you're kind of lining yourself up for that. You're looking for the problems, but so it would be
yeah.
great to have some strategies to change that.
Yeah. So 97% of the things that we worry about never happen.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we confuse worry, if we look it up in the dictionary, what worry means, with caring.
Mm-hmm.
It's a funny thing. We think we're caring about our kids, caring about whatever's going to go wrong in our life because we care. But caring has nothing to do with worrying. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
first awareness is even switching the words that we use has a tremendous power. If we switch the feeling from, oh, I'm feeling myself worrying, you can say, oh, I feel myself caring.
Mm-hmm.
It's a power word versus a force word. It sits on the positive side of our brain waves, positive physiology flushing through our system, and we feel calm entering. Oh, I feel myself caring about my kids right now.
I'm
That's,
writing this down. Yeah.
yeah. So in my office, we actually have tools to release these things, but here's what we call a fire drill. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When we're worrying, we're in an emotional part of our brain. We're feeling it. We're feeling it inside our body. So that takes place in our middle brain. When we're thinking about what we're worried about and changing that to a word like caring, caring is identifying a cognitive identify what we feel. So simply by identifying something, we're moving into a cognitive function. Cognitive functions take place in our neocortex, which is a different part of our brain. So think about we've switched rooms. We've walked out of our middle brain and we've come into our forward brain. That alone distances us from the feeling part of it into the identifying part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Identifying things like little kids did. Eyes, nose, ears, right? This is a learned function. So going into cognitive functions, separate yourself from the emotion that you're feeling right now. We can do that in a variety of ways. Identifying, writing them down, cognitive functioning. We learn how to write. So that's a little bit of the science behind why a gratitude journal works because it's a cognitive function. So we're separating ourselves from the feeling inside our body and simply identifying what we're feeling. So that's good. So I have what's called the fire drill, which I was holding up my hand so you can see, 4 fingers and a thumb. And each one represents a sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to identify 5 things that I can see in my surroundings right now. It can be trees, it can be snow, a lamp, yourself on the screen, the color of my shirt, and maybe the picture, the lovely little polka dotted butterfly behind me. 4 things that I can feel on the outside of my body, so not emotions. I can feel my butt sitting on the chair and the temperature difference of where I'm sitting versus the clothes that are on my skin and where my ankles are exposed and it's a little chilly. The weight of my foot against the floor, my glasses against the bridge of my nose. 3 things that I can hear. I can hear the hum on my computer, my own voice, and I can hear a phone ringing in another room. 2 things that I can smell. Don't have any essential oils, but I'll have to think about that one. And one thing I can taste is still my morning coffee. So simply by running that little fire drill exercise, I've given myself that 10 seconds to not be in my feeling brain and actually bringing myself firmly into the neocortex. That calms our emotions. And we can keep doing that. And like I said, a deeper exercise would be to actually then write it down, having that identification and that kinesthetic. You're writing it, you're seeing yourself writing it. You might even hear the words that you're writing inside your ear. So you're getting that try factor. So those are really effective tools that work super well.
Uh,
Numbers,
yep.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah. I've heard the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 before, but never the science behind it, the reason why it works.
Yeah,
So I always
yeah,
assumed it was just kind of like a distraction tool, but it's actually moving where you're, which part of your brain you're using. So
yeah.
that's really powerful.
And I find it very important to marry the science with the technique so we
Hmm.
understand what the brain is actually doing and why it's effective. So the second thing I've already told, or you already know this, that negative thoughts, we'll think of them as a negative magnet, and positive thoughts, we'll think of them as a positive charge. And we know what happens when negative and positives meet, right? So if we have an event in our life and it's got a negative, what we call a sticky neuropeptide, that's all it is. It's an emotion stuck to the event that we were in. We can effectively release that emotional pain from that event if we look for the positive takeaway. So this is the idea of gratitude. Why does gratitude work? Why is it a buzzword? Why has it moved from fluff and buff into Time magazine? Right? Why? Well, the reason why is because it creates positive physiology. And when you're thinking about things you're grateful for, or something that you learn that is very positive, even through a difficult situation, your brain can only be in that thought. So as your brain moves into gratitude, into something I'm grateful that I learned not to walk down a back alley in Timbuktu. I'm grateful that I learned body language where I can tell that this person I should avoid. I'm grateful that I learned something, right? Even in really horrific life circumstances, we learn. We learn we have the capacity to defend ourselves. And if we don't have the capacity to defend ourselves when we're 5, we certainly won't get ourselves in that situation when we're 20, right? Or we learn to hide, we learn to be quiet, we learn to judge. There's things that we learned. And once we identify that, that magnet falls away. And what we learned are actually resources that we have access to now, as long as we get rid of the pain. So moving from the negative to finding the positive. So using that idea, what, of course, we wouldn't want anything horrible to happen to ourselves, but if it did, what did we learn that is now useful to us today? So that's cool. So that's the second way we can release it. And there's a third way. The third way requires a little bit more technique. But what I'm wanting to do, and if you were to be in my office, and when we're working online, we have a chart that we send you. So I have a poster sized chart, several things in my office. And there's 3 words that are repeated over 72 times, just like a book: red, green, and blue. But the words are miscolored. So red might be green, and green might be blue, and blue might be red. So they're random. There's no sense to them. But why I say that is when somebody comes in with an emotional pain that they're tired of struggling with, we run this exercise. And why it works is we shift them from what they're feeling right now, which we go through a process to bring that into their body in a safe way. And then we have them focus on the chart. And I'm going to ask them to tell me the color that they can see rather than the word they can read. So that takes cognitive brain power because you have to bypass the word that is in front of you that your brain is currently identifying and pass into a different part of your brain. So it's called dual processing. Left, right brain processing it creates deep concentration. And so you tell me the color that you can see, boom, 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 72 times. The second round, when it's red, I ask you to put your right hand up. Again, concentration. When it's blue, your left hand goes up. And when it's green, I want you to clap. But there's something else that's happening. So we'll tell you the science behind it in a second. There's a third round. On the third round, right hand goes up when it's red, but your left leg goes out. Left hand goes up when it's blue, your right leg goes out. And you jump and clap when it's green. So it's like learning how to line dance, right?
I was never good at that.
It doesn't matter if you get it right. That's the cool thing. So why it works is our brain identifies an emotion that we're having with physiology. It has the picture of it in its mind, the sound of it in its mind, often a feeling within our body, whether it's compression or pulsing or temperature, heat. We go through the identifying part of how you feel. So you're in a safety net there, right? You're in what we call a dissociated state. You're looking at what that feels like inside your body. So you're not really reliving it, right? We're looking at what an emotion looks like and is stored like inside our mind and our body. It also comes with, and it's because mental health, you guys will know this, depression has a certain body language. You stand in a certain way. Your temperature is lower. Your heart rate is lower, slower. So we look at heart rate, respiration, and body temperature. 3 physiological aspects of what that emotion feels like inside my body. And we don't have to identify it, although I might ask you if there's a temperature. So why it works is we change those 3 things. We refocus the brain in dual processing. Doesn't matter if you get it right, no pressure. And we have you do an activity which changes your heart rate, your respiration, and your body temperature. When you finish with that exercise, which takes about 7 minutes, and we have you recall that experience that you have, the emotion itself will show up like a blank page in your mind. And if you can imagine, I've got like a marker here, which has a little green cap. So your brain only understands that emotion in one way. It's a complete picture. The emotion is connected to physiology. So when I change your heart rate, respiration, and body temperature, what I've effectively done is remove the cap from the marker. So that neural pathway cannot exist in a changed way. So it collapses. We logically know that the event took place, but we're no longer connecting to the emotion that was connected to that event. We've released it. And that neural pathway stays disconnected for a very, very long time, maybe even forever. We can reinitiate, of course, if we have a new event in our life or maybe another event. This one's very effective for a one-off, like something bad happened. You want to clear the emotion so you can move on. I always say, like, just go to the grocery store and pick up 2 25-pound bags of flour. And that's what you've been doing for 30 years, carrying them around. It's heavy. And really, you just have to set it down and it doesn't have to be hard. But why I say this is Um, we have tools today that we can use effectively to release emotional pain. And I want people to know that, to feel hope, that you don't have to live with the pain. And it doesn't have to be years, and it doesn't have to be hard to get rid of it. They're out there. And neuroscience is, like I said, things like gratitude. We used to think, oh, meditation. Oh, what's that all about? It was fringe. No longer fringe. This is like science proven, effective, real tools that are usable for everyone at no cost today.
All right, Adele, this is great. I feel like I could keep asking you questions and we could go on, but this is a great introduction to kind of neuroscience and understanding what's going on in our brain. And I find, for me, understanding is really powerful because then I know I have the tools to change it. When it's this mystery, I don't know what's going on and why and how it's happening, it's hard to change. And I do the same with nutrition. I explain to people how what they eat for breakfast starts the energy roller coaster throughout the day. And when people can see, oh, I understand why this is happening, I understand why my body reacts in this way, it gives you a power to make changes and to choose what you want to do with that information. You can make a different choice, or you can be aware of the consequences that are going to happen. So,
Mm.
yeah, it's really powerful.
Yeah, I love it.
So
And
people are, yeah, go ahead.
just saying, like you, I agree. Like having the understanding, because quite often we sabotage. So that's the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we do it? And again, that's mind science.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that somewhere within ourselves is a belief system that's interfering with logic or the desire to change.
Mm-hmm.
And we, again, eat something that puts us on a roller coaster when we already knew what it was going to do before we did it. Just look a little deeper. There's a belief system that has to change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we work. So,
Yeah, that mind body connection. It's so
yes.
powerful between them. Yeah. So people who are curious about more about what Adele does, I'm going to put her links and information and everything in the notes for this episode, including there's a link to book a call with Adele if you want to explore or talk to her about some of this some more. And I think that, yeah, it could be fascinating to follow up on. But for those, Adele, I guess, who are curious to learn more or who want to explore some more of this, do you have a favorite book you recommend? Whether it's directly about NLP or just about mindset and thought and
Yeah,
all
I've
of
got
those.
so many. I loved Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way. I loved
Oh.
that. So many great quotes, and it was really historical as far as like going back to Marcus Aurelius and some of these really early stages in time. Right now, I'm watching or listening to Michael Singer's The Untethered Soul.
Mm.
Love David R. Hawking's Power versus Force, the power in our language. And really, that's, I guess, something else that's so brilliant and we all have access to is to listen to the words that you use every single day to tell your story.
Mm-hmm.
Really do align with how we feel about ourselves inside the brain. We have what we call a signature language. And when those words keep getting repeated over time, they show up a belief system within our mind. So just to be aware of that and to catch yourself when you're, talking about life is hard, why is life so hard? And then, know that your brain is running an algorithm and searching for information within your environment to make that true. And
Yeah.
so, we really are creating the world that we believe to be true, and that is one way for us to be that, um, what would be like a private investigator into
Yeah,
our own mind, Caruso or something,
that's right.
to bring light to how we can immediately shift those beliefs within our system. And again, now you have three different ways of
Mm-hmm.
those negative words into positive words.
That's great. I read a book in grad school called Metaphors We Live By. And it was about how, yes, we understand when we think about life as a battle or a, what the words we use affect how we view the situations we're in. It was really probably a more academic version of some of these other books, but definitely looking at how that language makes a difference in how we see things. So important to be aware of that. Great. Well, thanks so much, Adele. I really appreciate you being here and sharing both your story and some really helpful strategies that people can use.
You're really welcome. I love sharing. So thank you for inviting me.
Great. Thank you. So, and thank you for watching. I invite you to join us again next Monday for Mental Health Mondays, where we continue to explore all the different things that support good mental health and wellness and continue to build our toolkit of resources we can use to support our own mental health. Thanks for being here, and I look forward to seeing you again.